Welcome into Pallilo Points. I'm Brandon Strange with Sports Map Houston. I'm joined by ESPN 97.5 and 92.5's Charlie Pallilo. Charlie, welcome in. I want to talk some Astros with you. Before we do that, just want to remind everybody, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do. Charlie, this weekend, the Astros heard a sound they hadn't in quite some time. A PA announcer announcing, coming up to bat, Yordan Alvarez. Now, I wasn't there. I just assume that's how it went down as a dramatic reenactment, but last season, the Astros were a game away from another World Series appearance, even without Alvarez. They have since lost George Springer. Do you think Yordan can come close to being as good as he was his rookie season, and how critical will his performance be this year in light of Springer's absence?
Logic would say you bet the under because he was historically awesome as a rookie, and that was not quite 2/3 of a season. He did struggle for a chunk of the postseason against better pitching competition, and you're going to face rank and file during the regular season. But as pitchers get a little more video on him, and you can find at least some semblance of a hole. But as long as those knees are healthy, if he produces at 75-80% of Rookie of the Year Yordan Alvarez, that's a potent force, and he is the clear and fundamental offset purely as an offensive player in the batter's box. Rookie Yordan was better than George Springer's ever been over the course of a full season. So Springer out, Yordan in. Now you're not having the speed on the bases. Certainly defensively, Yordan's a minus since he's not good in left field when there. He could never take to first base. So he's a DH only. But offensively, right, you could just plunk him in the cleanup spot or the 5 spot against right-handed and left-handed pitching. And had they lost Springer and Brantley, that would have been asking too much for Yordan to just make that up. But if you're getting reasonably credible performances from Altuve bouncing back, Correa bouncing back, Gurriel, we'll see. What you expect naturally from Brantley and Bregman. Alvarez is the one additional thumper that can take this lineup from pretty good to among the best in the league.
He's had issue with both knees now, which is troubling at his age. How do you see them handling him this year, not just in, like the amount of innings that he sees, but could we see him be eased out into the field defensively at times?
I think at times would be the operative phrase there, because he's just not very fluid as an outfielder. We didn't see a whole lot of him, but what we did see as an outfielder, Yordan Alvarez is a hell of a hitter. First base, it's not as easy as just throw a guy out there. You'd like to think that. But Gurriel, a very nimble defensive first baseman who grew up a third baseman, so to just take an outfielder because he's a big lummox in the outfield and say he can handle the footwork at first base doesn't seem to be something in the offing, though the Astros may try to revisit it a little bit, especially since post-Gurriel, they have nothing brewing at first base right now. But Michael Brantley is not a 160 game per season left fielder every day, right? His own injury history, he's creeping toward the mid-30s. Ideally, you'd probably like to DH Brantley 30, 40 times per season. Well, you're not going to be dropping Yordan in center. Yeah, for damn sure, I'm going to be dropping him in right, and that's irrespective of how Miles Straw and Kyle Tucker are performing. So if it's left field or bust for Yordan, it needs to be some left field just to spell Michael Brantley, who you also are not going to play in center field unless you're accepting grossly below average center field play defensively. You don't want him in right. That's why it's going to be Brantley in left and Tucker in right to begin with. I guess we should just count our blessings that the Astros made that move to the American League a few years ago, because without a DH, well, you really couldn't have Brantley and Alvarez on the roster together. So Dusty Baker will have to work through that. But I would be surprised if Yordan plays more than a couple of dozen games in the outfield. A couple of dozen games might be considered good.
The problem with Yuli is that he's coming off of a down season himself, and we don't know whether that's because he just had an off season or whether it's because he's long in the tooth and maybe he's losing something out of his game. We'll have to see this year. And you mentioned they don't have a backup plan for Yuli. What's the likelihood that maybe, Yordan could eventually be that backup plan at first?
I think that's a tough OJT, on-the-job training transition to work toward within the regular season. So it's probably a real downer of the fact that Yordan, from when he had the COVID setback last summer and then the knee problems, and now he hadn't played until the last 2.5 weeks of spring training this year because we're taking him tenderly. Right? You need reps, whether it's on the back practice fields in spring training games, to just throw the guy in live in major league games. Now, maybe if they're part of a lot of blowouts, hey, we're up 12-3 in the 8th inning. Yordan, why don't you go play first base for a couple of innings? But to play him substantively at first when he really has not done it before, he showed very poorly when they tried it a little bit in the minor leagues. I would think that's an off-season 2021 to 2022 project. If you're moved on from Yuli, or you're picking up an option on Yuli for 2022, Gurriel has to prove that he didn't tumble over the hill, right? He had 31 home runs in the Juice Ball 2019 charade. 2020, he was god-awful, right? Altuve, there's every reason to expect he'll bounce back. I don't think the MVP level Altuve, but at least he'll be good. Gurriel's getting ready to turn 37. And, well, with the Cuban guys, you wonder, we're pretty sure he's getting ready to turn 37. So did he fall over the hill or did he tumble down the hill? It's an important short-term, mid-term, long-term question for the Astros. Ideally, you'd think Yordan, big target at first base, just be competent. Right? You don't need Jeff Bagwell's slickness defensively over there. Just be competent. And if you're going to be an elite offensive player, that is all right. But if you're going to be a butcher over there, that's not what you want as your long-term solution at the defensive side of first base.